Hey guys, we are here for the very first Dark Horse podcast. I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor. It was really generous of them to take a risk on our first podcast here. So I would just like to send a shout out to the folks over there at Dark Horse Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Denver and Longmont. Really great guys. They're taking a risk on us here. So if you can, go down there to Denver and Longmont and check them out. Again, that's Dark Horse Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu sponsoring our podcast today. So just big shout out and thank you to those guys.
Yeah, make sure to call or email them today. I know they have some great specials. They offer a tremendous product line of jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, rolling, gi and no gi. So look them up online or give them a call, yeah?
Yeah. But enough about that corporate nonsense. Let's get into some jiu-jitsu. This is our very first podcast. So we were thinking we're just going to talk about some. Well, I guess we'll introduce ourselves first, and then we'll talk about some of our firsts. Professor?
I have with me Professor Charles Gaffield. I met him training at Tri-Town's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Shortly after he started training, I was teaching, I don't know if I was there for your first class, but I was teaching a class there once a week, and we got to...
might have been a blue belt at that point. Did you meet
maybe
me as a white belt?
Maybe I met you in Boulder. I met you as a white belt, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think we met first at the class, was it the in-house tournament in Boulder?
Let's go with yes.
Okay. But yeah, I think we met first at Boulder, and it was kind of short, but you were talking to Erwin, and that's how the whole come down to Tri-Town, hang out.
Yeah. Back in the day, it was called Boulder Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Boulder, yeah.
Right, when Boulder was way more famous than Easton.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, in the grappling world, it's kind of reversed now.
So we were going to talk about first. That's us trying to remember when we first met. But we trained a lot over at Tri-Towns while that existed. Yeah, you have any first you want to lead off with? I didn't.
So since you more or less did my intro, I am sitting with Professor Andrew Dutterer. So like I said, we started training together at Tri-Town, really. You just got back from Brazil.
That's right.
And it was just I think it was an easy foot in the door. Erwin said, "You want to teach? Come teach." And it was just kind of no hassle like that.
Yeah. Erwin had always reached out to me and helped me out, even though I was big and strong and not always the best training partner. He was always more than happy to roll with me, and he always gave me pointers. He was a higher belt, so that was cool.
Yeah. That kind of goes into first teachers. Erwin was my first teacher. That was a trip. When I started, Erwin was a purple belt. So my very first teacher was a purple belt in a tiny little town, and he was an awesome character. He grew up in the Philippines, so he's got this great accent, and he would explain things in a way that was like very different than almost anybody I'd ever met, but was so memorable.
He definitely had his own style, for sure. Very distinct sense of humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like the things he would talk about really stuck in my mind. They were a little unusual, but like, okay, I get it. I remember that. I'm right there. It was a really fun first teacher. Yeah. How about your first teacher?
My first teacher was Rafael Lovato Sr. In 2000, maybe late 99. I was living in Oklahoma City, and I had seen the first couple of UFCs, and I'd seen Royce Gracie, and I thought that was amazing because he was smaller than a lot of people that he would beat, and he wasn't particularly athletic or strong looking. And I was playing football. I played football and I wrestled in high school, and I loved both of those. I loved wrestling. And I had been driving by, I believe, his academy. I think it said Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but what I was looking for was Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, because I knew Hoist Gracie taught Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and I didn't know if Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was the same thing. So I drove by it for months until I finally went in there, and he had pictures of several Gracies that he trained with up on the wall, and I was like, okay, maybe this was it. And I was super nervous. I put it off for a long time because in my mind, for some reason, I thought that I would be fighting in the cage on day one. So I wanted to be at least mentally prepared for that. Which, if you're wondering, that's not actually the case. So don't put off training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Whatever martial art you want to go into is mistake number one, right? To put it off until they're in shape enough to start training. But I went in there. Rafael Lovato Sr. was, I believe, a purple belt at the time, and Junior was a blue belt at the time. And I want to say he was 16 and still in high school. And Senior was a god of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I remember he played some butterfly guard, and his hooks were impossible to get past. I couldn't comprehend. It was so good at Jiu-Jitsu. And now I think he was just a purple belt.
Yeah, I remember looking back, and yeah, when I started, Erwin was a purple belt, and he felt like just invincible. And he'd like to play, we called it the copy ninja, right? Where you would do something, you would do your move, and he would stop you, and then do the same move back to you, but better. And yeah, back then, oh my God, purple belt, it was just God level. It was amazing. Nothing you could do, and now I look back, and oh man,
he's a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
yeah.
dude.
Yeah, and I look back and okay, yeah, he's a purple belt, and we all got better, right? We all thought this was the top level, and everybody blew past it at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, back in 2000, there were so few Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructors around that having a purple belt instructor was a really high level.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think when I started, there were 5, 6 black belt schools in the whole state.
In the state.
Yeah. And 3 of them were Animals Association, and 2 of them were Mauricio Zingano.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's right. He was super early.
Yeah. So just a quick reminder, everybody listening, you're not alone. Take care of yourself. Mental health is not a joke.
Reach out if you need help.
Absolutely.
For context, Mauricio Zingano killed himself maybe 7 years ago-ish.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the facts of the case, so I couldn't tell you. But
Nor do I, but
no
that's
suffering silence.
yes, and that's never the answer.
Yeah.
All right. But anyway, talking about firsts. So yeah, okay. So we're talking about our first teachers. How was that? Do you remember your first class?
Not specifically. I remember. I have some flashes in my mind of really starting off training. Lovato didn't have a gi my size, a jiu-jitsu gi my size in the academy, so I ended up getting a thick judo gi with the 3/4 length sleeves that are kind of baggy, and it was blue, and I had that for a long time. And I remember he had a note card system for attendance in classes. We had to turn in and then mark it and put it back in the box. And I was taking classes in late morning, so it was a 10 a.m. class or 10:30 class, I want to say. And I was lucky because he almost always taught that class, and some of the evening classes he wouldn't teach, so I got a lot of instruction from from him at the time. And I remember, well, I was fresh out of high school. I was 2021, and I was fairly arrogant about my wrestling skills. And so I was like constantly trying to test, trying to beat everyone I rolled with, going way too hard, way too explosive, using way too much strength. And it like took a long time to realize that it wasn't gonna work. It didn't matter how hard I went, I had to focus my efforts on learning and applying the techniques that was taught in class.
Yeah. The white belt struggle.
Yeah, it's real.
Very, very real. It's awesome though when you see like that switch over, and people realize like, oh wait, if I go less hard in the right way. I think that takes people a long time to, or it takes not necessarily a long time, but it is a big leap to get there.
Yeah.
And we're saying like, okay, 100% in this second, 10% in this second, 20% now, 100% now, 40% now, and learning to dial it in so you're not wearing yourself out at 100% all the time.
It's a big leap mentally, like emotionally. It's fairly complex too, because we were talking about earlier about like building gameness and building confidence. Like you have to give yourself successes on the mat. You have to be enjoying the rolls, and the most natural way for both of those is to win, to get yourself some wins. But if you're injuring training partners, if you're injuring yourself, I mean, even if you're just trying too hard or you're too tense, you're not learning the techniques. You're not learning them nearly as quickly as you could be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen, and how, I mean, I've felt it where I'm going too hard, and since I'm not breathing, my brain isn't processing any of the information.
Yeah.
So I didn't learn anything from that roll that I went super hard on.
Yeah.
It was just
Vague impressions.
Yeah, I mean,
The fog of war is what it's called, like in war, right? Tunnel vision.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you get so focused in on one little piece of it or whatever, but then afterwards it's all gone because you're trying too hard.
Yeah. At the end, I just felt like I was underwater with my eyes closed.
Yeah.
And there was jujitsu all around me, but nothing was real. It's
A lot of grabbing and squeezing and trying really hard.
Yeah.
And forgetting all the techniques that you just learned in that class.
Yeah. Yeah.
So forcing yourself to relax and to slow down, even in the face of losses and rolls, because those aren't really what matters. And if you can focus on remembering your techniques and trying them, even if they don't work, it's a rep, and you're one little baby step closer to having success with that technique and building a repertoire of techniques that'll work for you.
Yeah.
And you're also ingraining habits of those things that you're doing that aren't jujitsu or that aren't good technique, and you're doing those over and over again. Those are becoming more ingrained rather than less ingrained.
Yeah. Yeah. I think now that I'm kind of thinking through it, it's almost the moment when you can kind of decide what you're stressing about. Is that turning point? Right? So stressing about everything and the press of the fight upon you.
Like what specifically in your mind is stressing you out?
Right. No, like where, in the very early stages, your lizard brain kicks in, and it all looks like an attack, and it's all stressful. And at some point, you have that shift where you're like, oh, that grip is stressful. I'm worried about that. I'm going to look at that and I'm going to put effort into that grip. But this opponent isn't stressful. The situation isn't stressful. The position isn't stressful. Right? Like I'm not going to react. I'm not going to counteract. I'm not going to go against the situation. I want to move against this grip or this shield, this position, whatever. But when you can kind of pick and choose what you're stressing about, that's the big shift, right? You're like, okay, I'm not 100% relaxed all the time. That's just gonna get you choked out. But I am selectively relaxed and selectively tense.
Yeah. I took it in a whole different direction when you said that. But it also kind of works. Like as you roll and you're training and you're trying to relax, I think it kind of brings to the forefront what exactly about the situation is stressing you out, is triggering that lizard brain. Like you're afraid of being smothered, you're exhausted, you're afraid of passing out, you're afraid of throwing up, you're afraid of embarrassing yourself, peeing yourself, whatever. You're afraid of getting your ass kicked, like in general, but like those things are forced into your conscious mind. You have to think of them and process them, whatever. But if you can like realize that you're actually safe.
Yeah.
You are safe. You can tap at any time. You can walk off the mats if you need to. You can ask someone to roll lighter. And you can force yourself to slow down. Then you can see those specific things. All right, when he grabs my pant there, that's really bad. I need to deal with that thing.
Yeah. I'm suddenly flashing to the end of Inglourious Bastards. The guy's telling him, "Oh, you're gonna get chewed out, or they're gonna hang you for this." It's like, no, I'm gonna get chewed out. I've been chewed out before, right? And I think about with jiu-jitsu, like, oh, I'm afraid to get squished. No, I've been squished before.
Yeah.
I'm cool,
Yeah.
right? Like, I got squished and I didn't die. It was uncomfortable, and now I want to put my good technique into it. But yeah, just like getting into those bad situations, whether by choice or by sheer time and service reps, you're not afraid of it anymore. And so continue to move through bad situations.
It's like something I talk about in intros a lot, which is kind of what you're talking about. Like the nuts and bolts of how training jiu-jitsu builds real-world confidence. Like you come in on your lunch break and you get your ass handed to you, but like at one point you're in a really bad spot, you're in the bottom of the mount, you're in a choke, whatever, and you fight out of it, and it like takes everything you have, and you do that, and it's you got your exercise in, you go back to work, and you're getting chewed out by your boss, and yeah, it sucks, and there's real world ramifications of that, but he's not trying to choke you unconscious. So you're like, I can handle this, I can do this.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things about teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is watching people come in on day one where they're like a little overweight, a little beaten down by life, and then fast forward to a year later where they've lost that 20 pounds, they've gotten that promotion at work, they've overcome some personal things and like their relationships or whatever, and their life's really starting to come together. In part just because they came in and trained and got their butt kicked for a year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's incredible value in just getting your ass kicked a lot. I think everybody should have their ass
It's
kicked
great.
a lot more than it is now, myself included.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, that's a decent segue right there into first competitions.
First competition. So the first couple ones were in Colorado. I moved to Colorado and I started training at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Boulder, now called Easton. And the only local tournaments were folded into the local karate tournaments, and there was a grappling section.
CKA.
Yeah, CKA, and you get these huge trophies, like 3, 4, 5 feet tall for third place grappling or second, whatever. And there's some weird rules. I know you had to start off on the knees for white belt tournaments.
When I did it, they had 3 divisions. Had a beginner, intermediate, advanced, and the beginner division was like 1 year of grappling or under, and they didn't care what your grappling was, and it started on the knees.
Yeah.
So it'd be wrestling, judo, whatever.
You'd fight some karate or like a taekwondo guy, and they come in with like a purple belt or a brown belt. You'd be all intimidated until you realized that it was a taekwondo brown belt. And they didn't know any grappling. They didn't know any jiu-jitsu. One of my very first matches, we had just been going over the helicopter armbar for mount when the person on bottom extends their arms and tries to push you off. And I got into mount and the guy was trying to push me off. And I looked up at Jay Jack, like, I thought it was a trap. I thought he was trying to set me up to escape mount. And I'm like looking at him with a question mark, and he's like, yes! And so I did the helicopter armbar and won the match. It was cool. But like, we had just gone over it, and I was like, there's no way he would actually do that thing that I just learned exactly as I just learned it. But yeah, totally.
Yeah, things happen on purpose.
Yeah.
My first one was at the North Glen Rec Center.
Uh-huh.
It was RMBJJF, back when that was a thing.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so first one was at the North Glen Rec Center. It was no-gi, and I had never competed no-gi before. I'd never trained no-gi. I was just shaking, nervous.
Standard, classic.
All right, I get on the mat for the first one, and it's over in like 10 seconds. I was terrified. I jump guard and my back hits the ground so fucking hard, and his arm was extended down, so I turn under, take that arm and extend, and catch the arm. It was over, and like I stand up. Okay, I'm suddenly not nervous. I'm okay.
Huh. You didn't die.
Didn't die. So it was like it was really fun, and the guy like brings my hand up into the air. So I have another match, and it goes really fast, and he yanks my hand up in the air. And the third match, I'm like, that's awesome. Like, I'm on a roll. And it was the one guy in the division that was like actually had more time than me. It was good. He ended up taking my back and choking, like getting the rear naked choke. And I remember thinking, I'm like looking at my coach, thinking, should I just go out? I'm not gonna tap, right? Like, I'm not letting coach down. I'll just go out.
Go out on your shield. Yeah.
Right, like, it's cool. I'll just go out. No, I better tap. So I tapped out real quick, but I was still like out of it. So when the ref gets a hold of us, I'm like zoned out. And so he's like, where? And I go to shoot my hand up, and he jams that shit down so hard. I was just like all zoned out and confused. Like, this is what happens at the end of the match. My hand goes up. Yeah, it was very. So, yeah, it was kind of an embarrassing match looking back now. Like almost getting choked out. Yeah, I fought back.
It's all part of the process, right?
Fought back for third. Made triangle. So,
perhaps unsurprisingly.
Yeah, all was right with the world in the end, but.
So for you guys at home that don't know, Professor Charles is very, very best. His signature move is the triangle, which if you can see him, he's long and lanky. Yeah, it's a dangerous spot. If you have the choice, do not let him triangle you.
I disagree with that sentiment entirely.
It's not going to be a good time.
Everybody should just let me triangle. You'll like it. I promise.
We're just going to have to agree to disagree on that one then.
I think that's good.
Was everyone's first win via armbar here in a tournament?
That's my first win that I remember in a tournament, was helicopter armbar from the mount.
Yeah,
My first one.
armbar from the guard.
Boom, 3 for 3.
Come to Dark Horse.
Yeah.
Some armbars, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, although I think that's super duper common. Most people's first competition win is armbar, guillotine, or rear naked choke.
Yeah, we would even compete with those.
No, because like the white belt mistakes are stick your arms out, stick your head out, or turn your back.
I'll do it.
I like the things that will happen at a white belt tournament. Somebody's gonna stick their arm out, somebody's gonna stick their head out, and somebody's gonna get their back out.
I was thinking about the first time I used Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in a self-defense situation in a fight, and I remember it was actually maybe a month or two after starting training in Oklahoma. I went to a house party, and I bought my case of beer, and I stuck it in a trash can, a little garbage can in the garage, and I went back for it later, and someone had jacked it. Someone had moved it, and I found it somewhere else, and I can't remember exactly why I knew it was my 12-pack of beer, but I took it back, and the guy got upset with me and challenged me to a fight. And so I remember turning my back on him to walk out the front door, which I was aware was a bad idea at the time, but I still did it because I didn't know how to manage that. And I shot and took him down, and he turned his back, just like you said. And I was on his back, and I was going for a rear naked choke, and his face was right over the curb. And I think his friends were like really worried about, like me bashing his head into the curb. Oh, I remember. I had long hair. I had hair past my shoulder blades, and at one point he grabbed a hold of it and he was like pulling me down. And it was like that next week that I cut it.
Yeah. When I started training, I had super long hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. My first competition was like down to my shoulders.
I probably had a tie-dyed Grateful Dead shirt on at the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. First time I ever had to use jiu-jitsu out in the world was I was at a LAN party. And like just sitting around all night playing video games. It was
A little local area network, huh?
yeah, and we were having a good old time. Another little group was they knew somebody in my little group or something or other, and so we were kind of going back and forth, but guys were kind of talking like, oh yeah, it's a jiu-jitsu guy, and one of these guys asked like, oh yeah, what would you do if like somebody grabbed you? Like, it really depend, I guess. I don't know. And so the night kind of goes on, and at some point one of these guys like grabbed me. So I look back, I see who it is, and I'm like, I give him the look like, dude, you get let go, quit playing. And he didn't want to quit playing, so I did the turning rear naked choke defense. He hit the ground real down hard. But now I always teach that technique with a wider base, because when I did it, my knee hit the floor. And and it was pretty natural. I mean, I was okay, but the guy was fairly big, so the weight, the momentum kind of carried us both down. And I'm like, I still had good control of the situation. It didn't stop me from doing anything, but I got up and my knee was all bruised and gnarly. I'm like, okay, well, I defended myself, and it hurt. So now when I teach that technique to show people how not to hurt themselves while doing it, hopefully. Self-defense in the real world's a tough one. We were kind of talking about it earlier, but the one I always use in the intro classes is, in a high-stress situation, you are going to do the thing that you have done the most times. All right? When the stress comes on, your brain shuts off, your automatic reaction is your highest repetitions. So if the thing you've done the most is nothing, then you freeze. Right? If the thing you've done the most is run, then you run. And if you want jiu-jitsu to be the thing that's available to you in a high-stress situation, you have to put the reps in and make sure that's the thing that you've done the most times.
You have to do it more than nothing and more than running.
Right.
Correct.
And then here's the weird one. You have to, in a controlled way, dial up the stress so that it's realistic to the situation you'll be dealing with.
Stress causes growth.
Right. Conflict precipitate change.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we got a bunch of firsts. We've got.
Did you talk about your first class at Tri-Towns?
My first class.
Do you remember your first class?
I do remember my first class. My first class, my intro class, was immediately before it. So it was myself at 21 and a 16-year-old girl and her dad. And so the dad was kind of like passive, really. He wanted his daughter to do jiu-jitsu, wanted her to do self-defense.
Yeah.
And so, like, this intro class was very much like opposites. This girl was being forced to be there
Yeah.
and was kind of not into it.
Yeah.
And I was super duper into it.
Couldn't wait to choke someone with your legs.
Yes.
Even if you didn't know it yet.
Right. So, 20 minutes later, the intro's over and class is about to start, and this girl could not get out of the building fast enough. And I could not get into the changing rooms, into that gi fast enough.
Yeah.
And so the first day we did Americana from side control.
Classic.
And my partner was being nice when we got to rolling after class. And I got it. I finished it. And just like elation, this huge big deal. And like, okay, I guess I'm here forever now. We're done, folks. We found it.
That was that thing I've been looking for.
Yeah.
I remember having that sensation. This is all I want to do with my life is train this.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so there's an interesting first right there. The first person that you considered your student.
I always name Gary Moots as student number one. So, like, officially, probably Gary. My first student. There's other ways of interpreting that. I bet there are other answers. But
Sure. Yeah, because I think of like my first students were the kids class at Tri-Town. So like my first student was Issachar, and or maybe like my first student was like little Liam in the kids class, and then when I started like really teaching and taking over that program, like maybe those were my first students. I think of Mikey as my first student a lot, right? It's like I am responsible for his promotions. I guess that could be a good standard too, right? It's like the first belt that you gave. And I think that's a big step, where you're saying, like, you're officially saying, all of this person's performance out in the public arena of jiu-jitsu, I'm willing to take responsibility for.
Yeah.
Right? Like if this person goes and competes, or this person goes and does whatever, I'm willing to put my name on it.
The first student that I spent a ton of time with and made a big impact on their game, as far as like an instructor, was probably Ian Lieberman. He and I drilled smash passing, pressure passing for a long time. And we ended up drilling a lot of stuff after that. But yeah, he never enrolled at Dark Horse, was never like a student in that way, but I definitely made a big impact on his game. We spent a lot of time together working on jiu-jitsu. I taught 2 different people flying arm bars that then turned around and pulled them off in tournaments before I was like officially an instructor. Jiago Liao, I taught a flying arm bar. Shoot, I want to say I was a purple belt at the time. And also Dave Tomarchenko, who was training at Tri-Towns. I taught him a flying arm bar, and they both pulled him off in like the very next tournament that they fought in.
Hell yeah.
And I still have never pulled off a flying arm bar in a roll, even, much less a tournament.
So I've definitely pulled off flying arm bar at a tournament. But it just goes so naturally with the guard pulling.
Yeah, there is that guard pull arm bar, which maybe isn't a flying arm bar, but close enough. Yeah. I pulled that off in training. I think I'm just a little nervous about landing on someone's knees in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I have a new goal.
All right. Well.
We gotta keep working on those flying arm bars.
All right. get into everything at some point. I was thinking about that, trying to put together like a mindset minute, and often I think about these kind of things in class, and I'm actually kind of happy about the podcast format in that I want to talk about, like, all right, I'm reminded of deeper concepts in jiu-jitsu all the time, but I don't want to spend 15 minutes illuminating a particular subject when I could get the students out there doing reps.
Yeah. Start off class with a 15-minute speech.
Right.
Sounds amazing.
Right. Oh shoot, where was I just going with that?
Deeper concepts. Podcast.
Right.
Mindset minute.
Oh, encyclopedic knowledge. That's what my thought was. Yeah, I was trying to think of how I would state it in a short format, but I don't think it really suits a short format. But there's a quote. I think might be Henzo, or it's one of the big guys, whatever. But the quote is, "Learn as much as you can about every move. It might not be your favorite, but it could be your opponent's."
Yeah.
All right. And so I think there's a lot of value in that, in the pursuit of knowing all the things, like in building your encyclopedia of all the things. But that's hard to, it's hard to advocate encyclopedic knowledge and specializing and learn your thing that is right for you and feels good.
It was definitely something I was really bad at as a white belt. I'd see a move and in my head I'd just be like, that move's bullshit, or it won't work for me, or it's too obvious, or like whatever. I'd find a multitude of reasons why I wouldn't really pay as much attention, or try to learn it as much as I should. But as a jiu-jitsu student, I feel like I tested out a lot of the gutters before I found the road, which I feel like usually makes me a little bit more patient with my students, because I see them doing things and I'm like, yeah, I get that. However, let's keep working on this move. You don't know when it's going to help you. Sooner or later, it will work for you. Trying to learn on the other side, trying to learn all the things versus you want to do that. You want to like pay as close attention as you can in class to all the moves, even if you don't think it'll work or won't work for you, or what you think is too obvious or whatever. And at the same time, really focus on developing your own game, your own specialty, because that's what's going to give you success the most quickly. Don't push people into a guard game, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. Your triangle isn't a guard game; it's a submission, and multiple guard games and multiple submission sequences tie in with that. So it's not even always a guard game. Yeah. And I feel like I almost did the opposite. Or instead of ignoring techniques or being selective, I tried to absorb all of them, and ended up not getting very much depth in anything. Spin your wheels.
Yeah. So my growth had a lot of plateaus, a lot of like just stall outs. Where I was just chasing too many rabbits, you know.
No one. Well, I say no one ever explained it to me, but probably people did, and I just didn't listen to like develop a specialty. And I think part of it is like not understanding what that means at first.
Sure.
Which is why I like talk about it in the classes all the time. Developing a guard game. What is a guard game? What is a game? What does that mean? How do you develop a specialty? Where can you do that?
So what was your first specialty, and how did you get there?
My first specialty was the Gordo sequence from half guard, and it happened because I just got smashed over and over again. I started off training on top most of the time, and I realized that those people that I couldn't beat, I wasn't going to be able to if I continued training in the same way. So I stopped and I started sitting on my butt and training from there. And I ended up in half guard over and over again, and I can't remember what class I took or whatever, but clearly with the pommel, coming up on the pommel, getting into the dogfight position or coyote guard, and that whole sequence kind of made sense to me because I wrestled, and I ended up there all the time, which is kind of like one of the two paths of picking a guard game. Like, one, somewhere you end up in all the time, or two, like see a guard game that looks really cool and you're super passionate about learning it.
Yeah, I think mine was the same as necessity. It was close guard. Yeah, I mean, figured out how to hip out and bring my legs back in front of me, and then my whole focus was, all right, break their head down, keep my ankles crossed. I wanted to keep my guard closed forever.
Lock your legs around them and then push one of those pesky arms out of the way.
Yeah.
Simple game plan, and yet effective.
Yeah, and so my first specialty was closed guard. Closed guard with an emphasis on triangles, like it's a bachelor's program. And then closed guard, and then knee on belly. My next, like, I want this. Focus.
Yeah, that was one of the last ones for me because I wanted to control them, to smother them from side control or crush them from mount or whatever. And knee on belly, I was like, whoa, way too much space, way too many variables.
Yeah, I didn't like the mount early on because I couldn't crush people. I didn't have like I had the length, but I didn't have any weight. I didn't stay planted on people very well.
Yeah.
So I really liked the knee on belly because it was so dynamic. Right? I was like, okay, they're gonna push me, but I'm not so close that they're gonna move me. So they're gonna push, and I'll just switch, and I'll keep going. And I liked to stay high and kind of float above them.
Drive those razor blade knee ears into their belly. Makes sense.
Yeah, we're fighting.
Makes sense.
I think they should feel like they're in a fight the whole time.
It is awfully uncomfortable on the bottom of your knee on belly.
I should hope so. I've gotten their review many times, and I appreciate it always.
Yeah.
I think it's a great compliment when people say that your whatever position is just like awful. Like, I think your passing is just one of the most miserable experiences.
Thank you.
And I really mean that in the nicest way. It's just I hate it so much. Yeah.
It's jiu-jitsu good, which means awful.
Yeah.
Painful. Uncomfortable.
Single direction fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I think that's not a bad place to end it. We're about pulling up on 45 minutes.
Okay.
Well, I don't even know if we made it through all our first.
We did. I think we made
the
it
first
through.
promotion.
Oh yeah, didn't do our first promotion. Plus we didn't get into our whys.
So these guys will tune in next week.
Yeah.
If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening to the whole podcast. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments or ideas, things, subjects that you'd like to hear future podcasts on. Let us know, and make sure to reach out to our sponsor, Dark Horse Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and let them know you love their product.
Comment, share, subscribe.
What?
Like, share, and subscribe.
Like, share, and subscribe for all future